5.5 years, the question of where Jessica O'Grady might be has gone unanswered. Blood spatters on the ceiling and woodwork. Missing since May 10th, 2006, UNO student Jessica O'Grady's never seen again.
There was never any doubt in our minds about that evidence.
We're hoping that we find any piece of her. I mean, we want her back. It was senseless violence. That's what it was.
Hello, my beautiful friends, my Sippendales. I'll never get over how adorable that is. Welcome to True Crime Wine Wednesday. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I am Sherilyn, and I am so glad you found me. If you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you for joining me every single upload. You mean the world to me. Hey, that gave me some Bradderstein vibes. I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who has already sent their stories for me to share. I'm just overwhelmed by the response, not in a negative way. It's really touching to me to already have so many stories submitted and that you trust me to share these. It really means a lot that I can be this voice for you, and I am looking forward to starting this new series. If you didn't see my post over the weekend, I'm starting a new series in addition to True Crime Wine Wednesday, also in addition to the podcast. I know we've been MIA on the podcast right now. There was so much going on my end, and then a lot going on the guests I have lined up right now. So it's just a process to coordinate everybody. But we will be back with more. And so this series I wanted to do because I get a lot of messages from people who want me to share a story about their loved one or somebody that they were very close to. I guess that kind of means the same thing. You know what I mean? Like a family or a friend. And oftentimes I just don't have enough information to put together an entire video on it. But I don't want that to mean that I can't share your story or give a voice to this person who meant so much to you. So I thought one of the best ways I can do this is have you email me your story and I will read that out. Obviously, the more detail, the better, so that we can get to know who you're sharing about. Their stories are so much more than what happened to them. So any background information, anything you might think is beneficial to just help us connect even further, that is appreciated. Like I said in my post, I won't be writing this into my own story. I am just going to be reading off the emails as they're sent. So essentially it is your story. It's just I'm the one delivering it and sharing it with our true crime fam. If you have a story you want to submit, you can do it at sherrilynstories@gmail.com. And again, I just cannot find the words to thank you enough for trusting me with this. So thank you. All right, let's get into it. Before we do, I have a quick word for our sponsor today, PDS Debt. You all know I have worked with PDS Debt before, and I am just so thankful to be working with them again and to share an option like this for anyone who is out there struggling like I once was with debt. If you don't know what PDS Debt is, they are a financial service company. Their goal is to provide financial freedom through effective and fair debt management. Very important. And their service is customized to each individual circumstances. Also very important because we are all different. And so are our debt situations. What PDS Debt does is they roll all of your payments into one low, easy to manage, 0% interest payment. So not only does that feel a lot more manageable to deal with, it also saves you so much money, thousands of dollars in interest and fees. I've said it before and I will say it again, that is my favorite part of this. Having every payment rolled into just one is so much more easier to manage and accept. I don't know about you, but for me, when I would see bill on top of bill on top of bill, it became to the point where it was unmanageable for me and I just turned off. It wasn't even something I wanted to deal with. I just pushed it to the side, thought it's gonna take care of itself. Someone's gonna pay that for me, no? Or you say, oh, I'll just pay that one next month. And then next month turns into, 6 months later or a year later. And that bills at collections. As much as you want it to go away, it doesn't. So not only does just having that one payment make it feel a lot less intimidating, but you also pay it off in a fraction of the time. If this resonates, this program could be a wonderful help for you. Everybody with over $8,000 or more in debt qualifies, no matter what your credit score is. It could be poor, it could be fair, it could be decent, Everybody's situation is different, and PDS Debt wants to cater to that. Right now, they are offering free credit reports to my Sippendales just for completing the quick and easy debt assessment over at www.pds.com/Dale. That's pdsdebt.com/Dale. Like I've said, this topic is very important to me. I want to make sure that nobody feels embarrassed or ashamed of any financial situation that you are in, have been, or may get into in the future. We've all been there, and it is possible to get out of. If you want help in doing that today, their website once again is www.pdsdebt.com/Dale. Thank you again so much, PDS Debt, for your continued support on the channel and for everything that you do, helping so many people take back their financial freedom. All right, riddle time. Today's riddle is, what runs around a whole yard without moving? All right, grab your drinks, grab your snacks. Your girl's drinking water today. Went on a little adventure Saturday evening, invited myself to our lovely neighbor's gathering at her house. This was after already several margaritas deep that I was just continuing to have from Cinco de Mayo. And yeah, I woke up with a harsh reminder that I am not 18 anymore and that it takes several days for me to recuperate. All right, today we are talking about the devastating case of Jessica O'Grady. I believe one of you Sippendales requested this one quite a while ago, and I cannot for the life of me find it. I really need to get some system going where we can just like have everything submitted so it's all streamlined and I have the name and I can give proper credit and thanks. I'm so sorry if that was you. Thank you. This was a case that I had not heard about, but it really touched me in the sense where I felt like I knew Jessica. She was so relatable. She had one of those personalities that, again, you could just see through photos. We've had several of these cases where it just draws you in and you get this different sort of connection, and that was Jessica for me. It's also an unsettling reminder that the victims we talk about are real people. They have friends and loved ones and people who never would have thought that they would lose somebody this horrifically. Before we get into all of that, though, I do want to start at the beginning and just learn more about who Jessica was, because she was so much more than what happened to her. Jessica was born to her mother, Rochelle O'Grady, and her father, Mike Fryer. She has two younger brothers, and growing up, she just adored them. Jessica had such a kind heart, and my impression of her is just everything about her brought you in. She had these beautiful hazel eyes, this warm smile. She was cute, charismatic. She was so kind, had a really fun personality. She was just one of those people who had effortlessly a lot of friends because everybody wanted to be best friends with Jessica. She was always full of energy and bubbly, always happy. It was extremely rare to see her down. Like many of us teens in early 2000s, she liked the tanning salon. Her go-to place was Ashley Lynn Tanning. Fun fact, I met Big Guy through a tanning salon. She also loved her cat Zoe. She loved children. She actually was the coach to her little 7-year-old niece's softball team. She was really close to her family. Growing up, she saw her aunt almost like a mother to her because her mom was very young when she had her. I believe her mom was 14 when she was born. Her aunt was a couple years older. So it sounds like it was like that everybody was hands-on helping to raise Jessica, and they were all just very, very tight. In 2004, she graduated from Omaha's West Side High School, and then she attended University of Nebraska, Omaha, so that she could stay close to her family. In 2006, she was 19 years old, and she had just made the hard decision that after this third year in school, she was not going to return in the fall. She wanted to take a semester off, reevaluate some things going on in her life, and really make sure that majoring in education to become a teacher is what she 100% wanted. Her best friend said that she was also toying with the idea of going to like hair beauty school. Fully relatable at 19, just not knowing what's around the corner, and if for the rest of your life you're wanting to commit to what you thought you did going into school. She had a part-time job while she was going to school. She worked at the Lone Star Steakhouse, and it was there that she caught the attention of a coworker of hers named Christopher Edwards. Christopher was pretty preppy. He liked the Gap, Hollister, big tennis and golf guy. He was also a big movie buff. And his personal life was a little bit complicated. While he was showing interest in Jessica and hooking up with Jessica, he had a girlfriend who also worked at the restaurant with them and happened to be pregnant. I guess they found out that she was pregnant in late 2005. And when he found out, he dropped out of school so that he could work more shifts at the steakhouse and be responsible for providing for the baby and for his girlfriend. Now, although his intentions were to be a good provider, he was feeling a little claustrophobic about settling down and having a family. Instead of voicing these concerns, though, he looked for a distraction, I guess, and he found that in Jessica. Now, Jessica knew he was having a baby with their co-worker, but she was a hopeless romantic, maybe not the best at making relationship decisions at that age, who is, and she was just really easily manipulated and wooed by his charm. They often got together in the evenings because Michelle was still living at home and she was on curfew where she had to be home by 11 p.m. every night, so that opened up the opportunity for Jessica to come over to his house in the evening. Sometimes Chris would also go over to Jessica's house and hang out with her and her roommates, and her roommates could definitely see that she was falling for him. She would snuggle up with him on the couch, she would pull out her baby photo album and go through it with him. And she knew that he was pretty committed to Michelle, but there was a hope for her that their fling would, naturally progress into something more serious, and she would be the one that would end up with Chris in the end. Then in May 2006, she thinks that she has news that is going to, get them going down that path. And she finds out she is also pregnant. Her friend said that Jessica was nervous, but seemed almost like an excited nervous. She knew this was going to be a big responsibility at 19 years old, but she knew her family was going to be supportive and that they would be hands-on and help her a lot. And she loved kids, so she knew she was going to be an amazing mom. When Chris Edwards finds this out, he doesn't really know how to react. He really thought he was just out here able to have his cake and eat it too. And now what he considered a fling has turned into this lifelong commitment, while he's already going through this lifelong commitment with somebody else. And he didn't know how he's supposed to explain this to Michelle, his girlfriend. His initial reaction to Jessica was just becoming really icy towards her. All of a sudden, he started avoiding her. He'd brush her off. Even at work, he wouldn't make eye contact with her or engage in any conversation. Jessica just kept that to herself, though. I think she was allowing him to go through the motions. Like I said, she was a hopeless romantic, so I think she just thought with a little bit of time, this will process. If I'm cool and supportive, everything is going to turn out okay. So on May 10th, 2006, Chris had plans with his friends to go golfing. And during the game, his friends noticed he was not acting himself. He was very tense, on edge, a little bit snappy. And these are his best buds, so they call him out on it. They're like, what's going on with you? Chris's response was he had made a huge mistake and gotten a girl pregnant, and it was a girl that wasn't Michelle. And he was feeling quite trapped and in quite the pickle because through this new pregnancy development, he realized that he really did care a lot for Michelle and wanted to marry her. But once she found out what was going on, that probably wasn't going to be a possibility anymore. He didn't tell them who else was pregnant, and his friends didn't pry. He distracted himself for the rest of the day with his buddies. They finished up their round of golf, and then they went to a movie. I believe it was An American Haunting at the movie theater. After the movie, his friends invited him to come back to their place to play poker, but he said, no, I'm just gonna go back home. It's been a day. And he did go back home, but what he didn't tell them was he made plans to meet up with Jessica there. They had been texting for a large part of the day and evening, and Jessica said that after she was done having some girl time with her roommates, getting a little bit of studying done, having some pizza, she was going to come over and see him in the evening. Her friends said they knew Jessica was texting Chris the majority of the evening because she was just sitting on the couch, had like a little smirk. They're like, who are you texting? She said, oh, Chris. And then after a couple hours of them hanging out together, she gets up and she says, I'm gonna go to Chris's now. She left her apartment around 11:15 p.m. in her gray Honda Accent that she named Francine. You guys have to let me know if you have names for your vehicles because I love when people name their vehicles. So Jessica and Francine head over to Chris's aunt's house. That's where he was living. He moved there after high school while his parents went through, I think, a messy divorce. He knew he would have more freedom at his aunt's house, more privacy. He had the basement suite to himself. I believe it had even a private entrance, so he didn't have to go through the house and see anybody. He could bring anybody in without them being seen. When Jessica got to Chris's house, she called him to let him know that she was there, and he comes up and lets her through the side entrance. It seems like it was just a casual hangout. She texted one of her good friends around 12:30, and the text said, "No shenanigans for Jessica." And her friend said that shenanigans was her term for, getting freaky. So it sounds like none of that was on the agenda for the evening, and she let her friend know. And that was the last anybody ever talked to Jessica. In the morning, her roommates woke up and Jessica still wasn't back. They figured she just might have stayed the night at Chris's, didn't think too much of it. But as the day went on, it wasn't like Jessica not to check in. So they kept trying to call her and text her throughout the entire day, and they weren't getting any answer. By the evening, they started to feel really uncomfortable because they still hadn't spoken to her, and it wasn't like her to just go somewhere and not communicate with them, especially because she would have wanted to make sure that her cat had fresh water and fresh food. She would never just leave Zoe and not communicate with someone like, "Hey, I'm going to be, a few hours. Can you please top up her food and water dish?" That entire Thursday, they're doing their best not to jump to conclusions, just hoping that there's going to be an innocent explanation, like she lost her cell phone somewhere. I think when you're in this situation, you just try to come up with anything that you can just to cope. But on Friday, they became really concerned when Jessica was scheduled to work at the steakhouse and then she never showed up for her shift. So they went to her job and Chris was working, and they said, "Hey, have you seen Jessica?" She said that she was coming to see you on Wednesday and we haven't seen her since. He said no, he hasn't seen or talked to Jessica either, and that he never even saw her on the Wednesday because he called her to cancel their plans, so they never got together. At this point, her friends reach out to her aunt to let her know that they're concerned. And all her family needed to know was that she was not in communication with her friends for over 24 hours, and they knew that was absolutely not Jessica at all. So they file a missing persons report. They get the missing person posters out there. They had quite a bit of support through the news stations to help spread the word throughout the community. So a lot of the people within the community were out there looking for Jessica with her family and friends. The lakes and rivers were searched. There was parks, wooded areas, hundreds of volunteers, but nobody found Jessica. As her friends and family are trying to process and figure out their next steps, they found it odd that Chris wasn't a part of the search. So next, Jessica's aunt goes to the steakhouse to talk to Chris. He tells her he hadn't seen Jessica since May 9th and that yes, they initially had plans to get together on May 10th, but he called and canceled them, and he also sent a text and canceled. It felt like they were getting nowhere. They weren't getting any answers. But 6 days after she was last seen, her car turns up in the parking lot across from the steakhouse that she worked at. For detectives, the location was key. It was across from the restaurant, so it was somebody who knew that Jessica worked there, and they didn't think that it was Jessica that parked it because if she was going to work, she'd at least park at her work. The detectives asked her friends and family if there is anybody in her life that she's spending some time with. They said yes. Prior to living with her friends, she was living with a 24-year-old that she used to work with at a different restaurant. She didn't know this when they first started dating, but I guess this guy had a little bit of a checkered past. In 2001, he was arrested and spent 2 years in jail for first-degree sexual assault. Apparently, Jessica found this out when a news segment aired in their area, and it was the police giving an update on him moving to a new area and them notifying the residents of that area because he was at a high risk for reoffending. When she found this out, she asked him about it. He admitted to it, and she ended things and then moved in with her good friends. They spoke to him, and he said recently him and Jessica had been spending some time together, but he hadn't seen her on the night of the 10th. He didn't even know she was pregnant, and he had an alibi. There was another reoccurring name that kept coming up. He knew Jessica, knew where she worked, and was who Jessica said she was going to see on the 10th. That was Chris Edwards. They go talk to Chris. He gives the detectives the same answer that he gave Jessica's friends and her aunt. He said they had plans. He called to cancel them, and he also texted to cancel them. Police retrieved his phone records and determined that was a lie. He never called her at all that day actually, and none of the texts that went through said anything about her not coming. Investigators head over to Chris's aunt's house, and he and his aunt are very cooperative. They let them in, they're answering questions, kind of just regurgitates the whole "I canceled for our plans on the 10th" storyline. And they're like, okay, cool. Do you mind if we look around while we're here a little bit, check your bedroom out? And up until this point, he had been quite accommodating, but then he looks at his aunt and he said, I think tomorrow would be a better day. They say, it's all good, you can come with us, and if you don't want us looking in a certain area, just say, I'd rather you not look there. And that's pretty smart, to make him feel like he's in control. But really, it's leading the investigators to the exact spots that they need to focus on. They go downstairs, they're peeking around a little bit, they go over to the bed, and they kind of ruffle the sheets a little, and Chris gets really anxious. He's like, hey, abort, I don't want anybody around the bed. But the detective starts kind of planting seed. He's like, maybe something by accident happened here. Maybe Jessica took her life here. Maybe there's a note or something that we need to find. So Chris is nervous, but he's letting them look around for this possible note maybe. And so they lift up the mattress, and the underneath portion of the mattress is saturated in blood. Not just a spot or a section, it's almost the entire mattress. They also see small areas of blood splatter around the room. There was some on his alarm clock, some on the headboard. And when they ask him, what is all of this, Chris? He says that he had a cut to his wrist quite recently and it bled a lot. And then he said that the last time he had seen Jessica, they were intimate and she was menstruating at the time. And that's what was all over the bed. I mean, I don't know what guys think happens during that time for us, but I'm going to tell you right now that an entire mattress would not be covered in blood. So much blood, in fact, that it was even 2 inches deep into the mattress. This part was interesting because I guess the detectives had to leave right away when they found this because they didn't have a search warrant. And while they're trying to attain one, they realized that Chris's aunt's property, it wasn't on the line where the Omaha PD could deal with it, which were the ones who had been investigating the whole time. So it had to be transferred to Douglas County. Luckily, since they were like, okay, there's like a huge amount of blood on the mattress there, they were able to get a search warrant within hours, and Douglas County was able to go back to Chris's aunt's with the search warrant. They collected evidence for over 12 hours. They swabbed Chris for DNA. When they sprayed luminol in the bedroom, it lit it up, specifically on the ceiling and on 2 of the side walls near the bed. There were huge swirl marks on the wall, clearly looked like a towel or something like that had been used to try to wipe up and clean all the blood. And on the ceiling, when you looked close, it was covered with a bunch of white paint spots that looked like there was something dark that it was covering underneath. But the white did not match the white of the ceiling, so it was very noticeable, the bright contrast with the dark spot underneath and then the darker shade of white ceiling. In the garage, they found a garbage bag with 2 blood-soaked towels, and there was also a receipt to a Walgreens. When they went to the Walgreens to look at the surveillance footage, they see Chris going to buy some products at 7:41 the following evening after Jessica was supposed to go and see him. He purchased whiteout, white poster board paint, and white shoe polish. And they were able to tie all of those things back to the ceiling. So instead of, repainting the whole ceiling, because maybe that would have been too suspicious, he just tried to grab some whiteout and shoe paint and cover up blood splatter that was on the roof. Well, not the roof, the ceiling. In his vehicle, they found these big, long gardening shears and also a shovel that had this broken handle on it, which wouldn't be suspicious if he was a landscaper or something. There was no sign of blood on either of them though, and on the initial sweep of the car there was also no blood. But then the lead CSI director said that he needed to take a second look at the vehicle, And all of a sudden, when he's the one to look at it, he finds trace evidence of blood in the trunk. And that's a whole issue on its own. He was a shifty dude. He was fired several years after this for planting evidence in a different case, and those people ended up being innocent. There was a lot of pressure to close the case, but without a body, the prosecutor had a hard case to prove to show how she died or even if she's dead. Despite the amount of blood on the mattress being pretty telling, they didn't just want to go into court with that one piece of evidence. So the prosecutor says they need more, and detectives go and speak to more of Chris's family and friends. And his best friend says that he does know of 2 weapons that Chris owns, and he usually keeps them in his closet. There are these 2 massive swords. I believe they're called Bangkok swords. But on the first search of the bedroom, they weren't found. However, when they go back on May 22nd, they're found. They're tested, and they come back with traces of Jessica's blood on it. At this point, Jessica's family was quite confident that she was gone, and the only thing that meant the most to them was bringing her home and giving her a proper burial and being able to say goodbye to her. So the prosecutors go to Chris and they offer him a plea deal that they will only charge him with manslaughter if he took police to where Jessica's remains were. It was Chris's dad that said no. He said he's not going to plead guilty to anything that he didn't do, so the offer was taken off the table. On June 9th, 2006, Chris was charged with Jessica's murder. Trial started on March 21st, 2007, and his defense was that someone else is responsible for Jessica's disappearance and there's no proof that she's actually even dead. He said all of the blood evidence on the headboard, the ceiling, the walls, the mattress didn't mean that a murder took place, and he was sticking with Chris's story that the last time they did see each other, they were intimate, it was that time of the month for Jessica, and that was the result. One thing during the trial that just really proved how unnecessary this whole thing was that Chris's girlfriend Michelle testified. By this point, she had had their baby. It was a little baby girl, and despite finding out that he had cheated on her with Jessica and that Jessica was allegedly pregnant, she had forgiven him. She was hopeful to still marry him and that he was going to be proven innocent so that they could start their life together. So the idea of him panicking and thinking that he was going to lose Michelle and the only way that he could keep her was to get rid of Jessica is just a punch in the gut. It just completely wins you. Ultimately, we have no idea what happened that night. The only person who does is Chris and Jessica. It's believed that Jessica was asleep or had her back turned and didn't even have time to react to an attack that happened because Chris's aunt and his cousin were home at the time and neither of them heard a noise downstairs. In the days leading up to Jessica's disappearance, Chris's Google showed him searching arteries, and based on the amount of blood that was found in the room, it's believed that his attack on her was focused in those areas. The belief is that one of those swords was used, did I just say swords? One of those swords was used to take Jessica's life. This is also questionable though, because that shifty CSI investigator was kind of spearheading those tests, and that sword had stayed in evidence for 9 days before it was tested. So it's a lot of planting time. That's not something the jury knew about though. And on March 31st, after 11 hours of deliberation, the jury comes back and finds Chris guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 100 years in prison, but he is eligible for parole after 50. It's interesting because I absolutely think Chris is responsible for whatever happened to Jessica that night, but I don't think that he used the sword. And can you imagine being him sitting there while that evidence is being presented? He can't be like, that's BS, you're trying to frame me or something. I didn't use the sword, I used this instead. Same with his vehicle. There was blood found after there was already a search done and there was none found. And then all of a sudden there was blood found in the trunk of his vehicle. But again, I don't think he used his vehicle to dispose of Jessica's body. I think he did it with her own and then dropped off her vehicle at the parking lot. That in itself is also something that really bothers detectives because Chris was, I guess, a shrimpy dude. He was only 120 pounds. And so they have a hard time believing that he was able to move Jessica's body up the stairs from the basement, out the garage, and then load it into his or her vehicle by himself. There's speculation that somebody helped him. One theory is that if he did do it alone, he might have put Jessica's body in a sleeping bag, and then he used that to pull her up the stairs, and that's why there was no evidence of blood anywhere leading out the garage. When they did the initial search of his bedroom, they did find a bag for a sleeping bag, but they never found a sleeping bag. So just like the container for the sleeping bag. One theory is that Jessica's remains were put in one of the public dumpsters at the time near all those retail shops that she worked around. Chris won't share any details though. He's never granted an interview. He's never made like a jailhouse confession that we know of. Since his conviction though, his lawyers have tried to appeal. Their argument is that since this lead investigator, part of the CSI department, was involved in his case, the evidence in Chris's room could have been compromised, and a judge did take it into consideration, but after reviewing everything felt like just based on the mattress alone and the blood splatter evidence in the room, that was compelling enough to prove that somebody sustained injuries in that room that you wouldn't be able to survive from. So he's still in jail, which I believe he should always be. There's just not a shred of empathy in his bones. He knows exactly where she is, and at this point there's nothing to lose. Just allow her family to bring her home. If he would have taken the plea deal and told Jessica's family where her body was and allowed her to be properly buried like she deserves, he would have already been released in 2016. Chris's family believes that Jessica is still alive, and it's their mission to prove this, to exonerate their son, which is, it feels like a slap in the face to Jessica's family for them to just continue hearing that he's innocent and that she's out there alive somewhere. It's like they knew how much family meant to Jessica, and if she could be with her family, she would be. One thing that really touched my heart was that it seems like baseball is still a really important part of her niece's life. She's kind of around the age that Jessica was when she last saw her family right now. And I'm pretty sure that it probably feels like she's really close to her when she's out there on the field playing the sport that both she and Jessica loved so much. I truly hope one day Chris does the right thing and allows Jessica's family to bring her home. If there's any way that I could be a part of that, or just simply being here spreading the message and her story, I hope that it can help bring her family the closure that they all need and deserve. Alrighty, that is it for me today, you guys. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the absolute world to me. It helps me so much. I can't believe how much we grow every single day, and it is all because of every one of you. Quick refresher on the riddle. What runs around a whole yard without even moving? The answer is a fence. All right, I will see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.